We are talking with Scott Kellum from SixCentSports.com, Robert Faringo from Doc Sports, and professional NFL handicapper Vanessa Walsh, previewing Week 6 in the NFL on the SBR TV NFL Experts Roundtable. All right, let's move on to the game that Scott wants to talk about, and that's Chicago -3 at home against Minnesota. Now here, if you're going to bet one team, you're either betting Donovan, McNabb, or Jay Cutler, and from my perspective, that's a no play for me. I don't want to back either of them, even against the other one. Scott, why do you like this line?
What's not to like about Donovan McNabb? No, I'm just kidding. But I do like Minnesota in this game. The Bears' offensive line's a mess. Julius Peppers may miss this game, which would be huge for the Bears. And like I said, their offensive line's a mess. Jared Allen's is having a quietly monster season for the Vikings. He could really disrupt Chicago an awful lot here. And I've got a couple of nice situations on the Vikings here, a couple of fundamental rushing situations that are actually in their favor, and then one rushing situation that actually goes against the Bears as a favorite and a team who cannot rush the ball very well. That's a very strong situation as well. I also make the line Minnesota or Chicago by 1, so I think there's some value here with the Vikings. And if you look at these two teams, the Vikings obviously rush the ball extremely well. Chicago's actually been above average rushing the ball, kind of surprisingly, but the Vikings are great rushing the ball right now, averaging 5.4 yards a rush. They're not quite as good as Chicago throwing the ball, although both teams are very underperforming in terms of throwing the ball. But the Vikings' offense overall is slightly better than Chicago's, and their defense has been much better than Chicago's right now. The Bears gave up a lot of yards to Carolina 2 weeks ago, which is nothing to write home about. I mean, Carolina's offense has actually been pretty good this year, and they gave up a bunch of big plays to Detroit again last week. Their defense, there's something wrong there. Obviously, Peters is out, Peppers might be out, and the safeties have been hurt for a while, and they're not that good to start with. So I just like the Vikings have a slightly better offense, a much better defense. They're getting points. And the Bears are banged up. I think the Vikings are a decent spot here. They have not fared well here in Chicago the last few years, so that does not help them, but I think they're the better team getting points in this game.
All right, that's an interesting tape. Robert Faringo, would you advise a bet on a McNabb-led team, a Cutler-led team, or neither?
I mean, that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I back up Scott here in that I think that the value is definitely on the Vikings for a lot of the reasons that he said. The Chicago Bears defense was terrible in 2008. It was pathetic in 2009. They were really revitalized last year when they got Julius Peppers, who had an amazing year last season. He is hurt, and I don't expect him to play. The Bears can't stop the run. They just cannot stop the run at all this year. And then when you factor in that they play that soft cover too, they're going to let people move the ball in the air in the 20s, but then they're going to have it rammed down their throat in the red zone. And that's why they're giving up as many points as they are right now. Minnesota is 1-4 right now, but the only game that I really felt like they were outplayed was, ironically enough, the Kansas City game. This is a Vikings team that probably should be 4-1, at least 3-2 right now. They've actually outscored their opponents by a point on the season cumulatively, while the Bears have been outscored by 3 points on the season. Bears coming off that Monday night game. Minnesota played phenomenal in the first half of that game last week against Arizona. I think that they could have some steam. They're definitely not mailing it in. But in the end, there are plenty of red flags, not that would make me want to play on Chicago, but that would make me not want to jump on Minnesota. Like Scott said, Minnesota is 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 trips to Soldier Field. You can't ignore that. And number 2, Donovan McNabb is pretty much like the worst quarterback, or one of the worst quarterbacks that you could have going against the cover 2 because he's so inaccurate. And the Bears have been another one of those predictable teams. When they're an underdog or they're on the road, they get it put on them. That's what happened in New Orleans, what happened in Detroit, whatever. However, when they are a favorite, they usually cover those numbers and they can deliver a beatdown like they did to Atlanta earlier in the year. So again, if I had to make a pick, it's on Minnesota, and not enough on Chicago to make me like them, only enough to make me consider not taking the Vikings.
Yeah, I think I'm staying way off this game. Vanessa, you have any opinion on this line?
Well, I believe that the best player on the field is definitely Adrian Peterson. I believe we're going to watch the Chicago Bears come out a little flat with the short week. Chicago's 1-5-1 against the spread following a loss, and they're 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 games overall. So I'm going to go for the Vikings right now at this point.
All right, you guys convinced me. I'll bet the Vikings. I changed my mind. I'll bet the Vikings.